Hi everybody, it's Rachael from Engage and Grow Central Midlands. Welcome back to the Future of Our People video series. And today I am delighted to be joined by Laura-Jane Rawlings from Youth Employment UK. Laura-Jane, welcome first. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited about this interview. I think it's going to be quite different to the others, no pressure. But first off, can you just tell us a little bit about Youth Employment UK and the important work that you get up to?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Rachael, and thanks for reaching out to invite me to this interview. It's a great opportunity for us too. So, Laura-Jane Rawlings. I'm the founder and chief exec of an organisation called Youth Employment UK, which was founded back in 2012 when we had 1 million NEET young people. So that's 1 million young people who are not in education, employment or training. And really the purpose of Youth Employment UK was to come into the space as a not-for-profit and really look at some of those systemic challenges for young people and why they're really struggling to make that transition between education and employment from their perspective, from their voices, from them telling us what their barriers and challenges were, and then using that insight and the power of those young people to try and influence change and influence change both in employer practice, because for some young people it's the employer behaviour that's a problem for them moving on into work, which is timely into this conversation that we're having, because I think that might come up a few times.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the policy, the government policy that we have in this country, and where it's just starting to create gaping holes for young people to fall through the system around them. So often it's not young people's fault that they are kind of subjected to a system that doesn't work for them, but it absolutely is them that suffer in that place, that they're not able to fulfill their potential, that they're not meeting kind of their own personal needs and desires when it comes to careers and fulfilling their aspirations. So 10 years on, we're an organisation based in Kettering in Northamptonshire, which is my home, so deliberately chosen close to my commute. And I have 14 staff, full-time staff, ranging from young apprentices through to sort of seasoned sector veterans. And as an organisation, we serve over 200,000 young people a month who come and access our online website to get careers advice and information. We have policy relationships with the Department for Education, Department for Work and Pensions, and the Cabinet Office, and we produce quite a lot of research and insight. We also have over 1,000 organisations who are members of Youth Employment UK who want our endorsement through our Good Youth Employment Standards badge and want our advice on actually how they become employers of choice for young people and create better cultures and environments that bring inclusion and diversity through the youth employment lens into their organisations, because young people are hugely talented and many organisations are missing that. So that's who we are and what we do. I think small and mighty is what lots of organisations call us. We deliver a huge amount of work with the smallest team here. So I think, again, that probably feature in this conversation as to our people strategy.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question, really. Like, obviously, the work that you do, there's no denying how crucial it is. And I think it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. Like, there's the kind of the 24 news hour cycle is crazy. I used to work at the Department for Education, so I was from the other side. But I totally respect everything that you do. In terms of the amount of work, as you say, small and mighty, what would you say are the key things that you do as a leader to get your team kind of motivated and on board with this really important mission that you're on?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we don't always get it right. Over the years, I've had my staff turnover. And I think it's really important. It's not our expert area for sure, but I think as a leader, it's about hiring people who are passionate about the subject. And maybe as a not-for-profit, that's easier to do than finding someone who's maybe working in, I don't know, bathroom sales. I'm sure there are passionate people in those sorts of subjects. You know what I mean? Finding people who are passionate and making change on such critical issues as youth employment is probably not the problem. What becomes the problem is, I think people are romanticizing demystify the idea of working for a not-for-profit, a small not-for-profit that's making change.
Yeah.
But the reality of the workload and the absolute driving force of me and my deputy chief exec to do more, because the problem's got worse over the 10 years for young people. So I'm more inspired to work harder and do more than I was 10 years ago. So that follows in suit of the kind of workload of the staff team. I do think what we do here is try and be honest about that. That does mean some people come in and they don't stay, because even when we're honest about it, they still think they can work it. They still think they know what it means to work in a culture like ours, and it doesn't work out. But at least we can leave on, fairly good terms, because it was honest up front. But I think my deputy chief exec and I very much protect our staff from some of that pressure. What we don't do is rush at them and expect them to operate as passionately as we are about the subject, or as expertly as we are about the subject. We have a very strong value base here. And so when we're working with our staff and we're developing them, we are thinking about who they are as individuals and growing them at a pace that suits them, not at the pace the organisation needs to go. That's my problem to solve, not my staff's problem.
That's really cool, because I think a lot of pretty much every organisation, they've got values, but quite often they're just plastered all over the wall and on the website, and they kind of, they rave about them. But then when you kind of start digging, like, do you see those values actually in action, kind of brought to life? And quite often that's not the case.
Yeah, of course. We've all got examples of working for those places as well, right?
No comment. That's brilliant. Something that I've noticed kind of with my little journalistic hat on, doing some digging, is that you've got a lot of young people, understandably, on your books, so to speak. What would you say and this is, I'm kind of jumping the gun a bit here, but what would you say the benefit of having them in the kind of the melting pot of ideas and innovation and creativity at the organisation?
Yeah, I think there's twofold answers to that question. So some of those young people are absolutely innovating and creating, and lots of young people do and can. But also, and particularly our young people, they're very early in their career journey, and we're developing them to become those innovators and creators. What we know about young people, and in particular, we produce an annual piece of research each year called the Youth Voice Census. And if you really want to get under the skin of who young people are today, reading that annual report will shine a light on kind of where young people are at. And we make a lot of assumptions, because we were all 16 once, we were all 18 once. We kind of think all young people should behave like we did when we were 18, and we all sort of think we were perfect.
I don't think anyone should behave. No one should behave how I did at 16.
No, me either. So we have to take a lot of assumption away when we think about young people. Now, we have deliberately hired young people who are furthest away from the labour market. So by which I mean they are young people that have anxieties, mental health challenges. They're not work ready. They weren't work ready. I don't believe young people can leave the education system and be work ready in today's climate, because there is not moments in the curriculum to build work ready skills. The work experience, Saturday jobs, they've all gone. So young people aren't getting those experiences that we might have had when we were in education, but employers still expect that work readiness. And those two things are something we talk a lot about to employers with. It is no longer the case that young people might be work ready. You're lucky if you can find them.
Yeah.
So we really understood when we hired our young people, particularly because they were furthest from the labour market, that we had to really invest in them. They joined us on Kickstart programs during the height of COVID. They moved from Kickstart into apprenticeships. They've completed their first year's apprenticeships with us. Some have now been with us for 2 years. Really interestingly, again, the timing of this is great. I met with all 4 of our apprentices, or those that just qualified from our apprenticeship program yesterday, to tell them that the gloves are now off. They've been here 2 years. We have protected them. We've developed them softly, slowly. They've had this really gentle culture and onboarding, and now they are moving up to executive levels within the business in terms of kind of moving from junior to the next stage in their careers. Yeah. And so it's time to develop them harder and to set the same expectations with them as we do with other members of staff. So So our young people are adding huge value, but what I don't want to do is create this idea that they come being able to do that. That's been 2 years in the making to get a school leaver to being executive level ready. And that's a huge investment. And of course, we were really ready for it because of who we are. But it'll pay dividends. I don't think those young staff of mine will leave youth employment. They'll out see me, and I'm the founder. You know, the loyalty, the insight, the professionalism they develop. They don't come with bad habits. We've taught them everything the way that we want to do it, and now they're ready to flourish in their careers. This does not happen overnight. There's no overnight success with hiring anybody at any age, though. And if there is an overnight success hiring anybody at any age, can someone tell me? Because I'm missing it.
No, I think you're totally right. But as you say, you can shape and mold those fresh young minds, haven't you? I think employers, there's a challenge in terms of which way do they go? Do they go kind of more senior, more experienced, but then kind of, you know, set in their ways, maybe bad habits? And I'd say, as you said, it is more of an investment of your time as well if you go the other route in terms of getting those kind of fresh faces that haven't been battered down by decades.
Yeah, right. And I've had both. You know, we've got senior experienced people here. We've taken you know, teachers who have never worked in our environment before. So we've taken people who are switching careers completely because their transferable skills were really interesting to us. Taking execs from our sector have come in, execs from the commercial sector have come in, and young staff. And I don't really believe that anybody's had less than a year's training and mentoring to be at a level of where we want them to be as an organisation before we can, you know, take the gloves off and unleash a little bit more pressure that the business has to have to them. So I think really investing in staff, whatever level, was a huge time commitment. And with 14 staff, having 4 under 20s doing apprenticeships with us, that is a stretch. It's a real stretch, but it's doable. And I'd hate for employers also to think, you know what, it's too hard to take on an apprentice. They're all doing their jobs on day 5, day 10, you know, but it's that wider development of them that takes the extra time. So they are worth it.
And as you say, I hope I am quoting you rather than what you said, like they'll be there when you're not. So thinking of like longer term, then, you know, it's going to be more intensive in terms of resource and time up front, but actually you are building the future, aren't you? So, you know, like the future of our people is that.
It can only be that, right? Because I just don't see, particularly in some of our businesses with aging workforces and real challenges, we don't start doing that. The market for recruitment gets smaller and smaller of the people with the skills we need. So we have to build early and build in-house.
Massively, both for the kind of sake of the organisation, but also for the sake of wider society. Otherwise, we're just sticking our heads in the sands, aren't we? Really? Yeah, amazing. Love it. What would you say as a leader? What would you say the biggest, if you can pick out one, you can have 2 if you can't think of one, biggest challenge or challenges that you found as a leader of people, and what were the lessons you learned from that?
I have recruited on potential in the wrong jobs, and I wish I hadn't. So I think that's the biggest lesson and mistake I have made, is that I recruited for potential where I met a candidate and thought, you know what, I can train you, I can mentor you into the senior role, I can get you where I need you to be here because I see your potential. And yeah, that's costly, because actually if they're not able, particularly at senior levels of the organisation, if they're not able to demonstrate that they can, you know, have that commerciality around them, have that ability to write reports at the level that's required, actually you don't know if you ever can really train some of those more fundamental skills. Possibly you can, but I think that in a smaller organisation has proven to be much harder to do. You know, I think when I'm going forward to recruit a senior role sort of next week, and it will be someone that has to come with some experience of working in a not-for-profit, working in a similar size organisation, because I think the reality versus kind of the expectation is quite different, and therefore then you spend a lot of time investing in people to try and get them there. And if it doesn't work out, that's been a huge waste of that time and energy. And they do get a lot of energy. Staff recruitment is costly, right? So I think hiring on potential is the biggest mistake I've made. And I think you just have to really recognize the level you need of that staff member coming in, and be really, really sure in your hiring processes that there's demonstrable skills there, unless you're aware, like with an apprentice, that it's the training as part of their learning.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. That's really interesting. Another thing I was thinking about in terms of your employee engagement, do you, I guess, kind of, do you know what kind of where you're at with that? Is it kind of anecdotal? Do you do surveys? Like, how can you kind of sense the tone, the mood of your team?
Just had a dog come into the office. So just culturally, as an organisation, interestingly, all of my staff come to the office. We're not hybrid. I have 2 remote workers, but those that are within travel distance come to the office every day, 5 days a week. Largely because there are 8 office dogs that rotate in and out. So on any day of the week, there'll be a different dog. Today is Pepper's day. She's just gone to lie down in a basket. So, and the coffee's really good here at Youth Employment UK, but it's really interesting. We have flexibility for where people work. People choose to come to the office and be here. And I think it's really powerful. I think that tells me a lot about the culture and the people. I think it's really important when we have young staff. Hybrid doesn't work for young staff. We took on 2 of our apprentices in COVID and lockdown. My goodness, we had to work hard to train them, to engage them. We had to be online with them first thing in the morning, check in at lunchtime, check in at the end of the day, because they were learning new jobs and fresh into the world of work. And it's those water cooler moments. I know that's a really old saying, but it's the instinctive conversations that happen in the office. It's where they're learning professional behaviour, they're building relationships, they're seeing how their peers might operate. If they've got a problem, it's very easy to come into my office, the door's open, to say, LJ, can you help me with this? All of that happens, and someone brings you a cup of tea when they know that you're doing an interview. Thank you, Laura. And so I think the culture tells me that people are happy here because they turn up every day and they come to work. Surveying people when you're 14, you can't do that anonymously, because the questions would take you down to, actually, I'm pretty sure it's that department, and in that department it will be that. Like, I don't think there's a fairness to do sort of staff surveys with less than 30 odd staff, where you can make sure that's anonymous, so it can be honest and real.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. We'll have a chat about that. And also, to be fair, like dogs, I worked at an agency before I set up here, and in the interview I found out that they like dogs and that dogs came in and I could bring my dog in. I was like, that's pretty much all I need.
Yeah, right. That and coffee, and the fridge is full of chocolate and biscuits and fruit, and we provide breakfast and we provide lunch to staff here. So there is breakfast cereal, toast, and lunch products available, healthy stuff, because of the cost of living crisis. So there are those sort of subtle things that we do to ensure that actually when young people, but all staff, are here, they're safe and looked after in the right ways. And dogs are part of that, of course, but it's also the other soft stuff that's done.
Yeah, 100%. Amazing. All good. I want to come and work for you.
I'll send that job description next week.
Yeah, send it over. What would you say your biggest priority is in terms of not necessarily growing the company, but in terms of developing your people, creating that kind of that high performing team you want in order for Youth Employment UK to get it to where you want it to be? What's the next big thing for you?
So we're just really thinking about how we build our senior leadership team. So some of our hiring processes have been hire young staff and train them in. And that can be hard if you don't have a good, solid senior leadership team to take on that mentoring and development. But also now we have got so big externally in delivery, I need to make sure that there's an operational senior leadership team, that if I or my deputy chief exec are not here, there is the same quality and expertise from across our broad in the senior leadership team to pick up and be able to run. I'd like to know that actually I could take a 3-month sabbatical next year and the business will not even miss me, other than, you know, for the fun times. But that's really important. I think when you're founders and passionate chief execs, and Lauren and I both are so passionate, we drive everything. We know everything. We can do everybody's job here. But actually, if we both went, you know, on a bus together and something happened, the business isn't very sustainable without us. So that's the next strategy for us, is sustainability outside of us too.
And do you know what, like from like the clients that I work with, quite often they are kind of own and managed businesses, and there's that risk, like they everything's new. And they're bringing on their kind of like the middle management and the, you know, the leadership, because they I think the other thing is aside from that risk is also that it can't be in their heads, because they're constantly firefighting rather than like focusing on growing the business and being on the business. They're constantly in the business, and it is really hard, especially when it's your baby. It's really hard, you know, when you found an organization and you're growing it for, you know, through the teenage years. Hard to take a step back, but it is kind of almost like a child that's becoming a teenager, and it needs to start getting its own independence and let other people from it.
And also, you know, the work-life balance that will come with having other experts within the organization that can just run those projects and not need to be hands-on. You know, I'm not actually a control freak. Lauren might be a little bit more, but it is just the surety of the quality of the output, and that we're making a difference to young people. You know, we need those people around us so that we can do that, and then everyone gets kind of the benefit of that work-life balance culture that would be nice to have.
100%. I think leaders are really good at not practicing what they preach when it comes to work-life balance. They're like, everyone, you know, you should be going home, but then they'll be on their emails at midnight. And I know, like, from when I was younger, I wanted to be, you know, moving up the ranks. So I'd just copy my leader's behavior. So I'd be like making sure I was first in the office, making sure I was last in the office, and emailing at night on my BlackBerry in the noughties or whatever it was. And kind of now I was just copying what they were doing. And it's really hard as a leader, because you kind of need to find that balance between making sure you actually get what needs to get done without kind of setting those examples of this is how we expect you to behave, even though I tell you something opposite. It's tricky.
Oh, absolutely, it is tricky. So, and also, I think when I think about the future of work, and we do here because of kind of the policy role that we have around youth unemployment, I think we're starting to see people of all ages. There's no stereotyping for me, but people of all ages are interested, more so post-COVID, in finding balance and having meaningful separation. I think that's really hard for people who are working hybrid, to be able to switch off a laptop. You know, I can leave my laptop here on the days that I don't want to take work home with me, and home is very much home. But I think that can be hard for other people. But growingly into the future, I think that more and more people are going to want to check if there's a true work-life balance in an organization. You know, that they don't want to. I think I read something that says, you know, people are less likely to want to live to work in the UK, but rather work to live. And so that BlackBerry culture you were talking about from the 90s is probably coming to its end.
Good for that.
Yeah, quite.
And also, I think the benefits of actually having that balance. I've just finished a book, which I can't stop talking about to everybody that gives me the opportunity to talk about it, is Stolen Focus. And I cannot remember the author's name. So I'll remember it. But and it's all about how actually taking that time out is really important for our brain function, for our memory, for our performance, for our energy, rather than just that constant work. So it's not necessarily just for our own kind of well-being, it's actually for the benefit of the organization as well. Like those micro breaks, not just looking at our screens the whole time, all of that sort of stuff. I could talk to you for hours. This is also interesting. But is there anything else before we wrap up? Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you kind of had on your radar that you wanted to mention?
No, I don't think so. I probably would just say, you know, when we work with organisations to really help them think about youth employment policy, we created 5 principles years ago with young people, but I think they really stand the test of time when it comes to what is a good employer. So I might just leave a reflection of those 5 principles here. So the first one is about creating opportunity. Find ways to create opportunity, particularly for young people, whether it's work experience or just sharing your insight in some way. They really need that right now, and they need that mentoring. They need those employers to be brave and create something for them. Really think about how you recognize talent. Young people aren't going to come with a ready-made skill set. It's just not how the education system works. So think about diversity and inclusion in all its ways, but particularly in recognizing talent beyond the normal functions that perhaps are traditional within your business. Be a fair employer. It's something we strive to do here. Fair in terms of the pay. The cost of living crisis hits everybody. But there are other things you can do, like the breakfast, the lunch club, the other things that you can do that make you a fair place to be for young people, but all people. Develop people, whoever they are. I think my experience has been, whether they're young people or older people, people want to feel like they're developing, they're making progress, they're making an impact. So there's quarterly review meetings, there's KPIs, those end of year reviews are really, really important to people, and praising on the way. We have thank you cards that we all have available on our desk to go and say thank you to somebody when they've done something for us. We recognise outstanding performance on a weekly basis across our team meeting. Helping people see their potential is really important. And then the most important one for us here is listening to people. Actually, don't make the big assumptions, but find out what people are really feeling, and having a really open culture that people can talk to you is the safest place to be when you're developing your teams. So I think we live and breathe those 5 principles here. They're not our values, but they're wedded into everything that we do. And so they're easy to achieve if you're a good, if you've got them in your mind. Actually, they're not big asks, they're not huge, but they do make a difference.
And as you say, that the recognition, the feeling like they're being listened to, the praise, that's not just for young stuff. That's everybody wants that. Like someone coming up to retirement wants that, because they want to.
I got a thank you card. I don't know if you see that, but I got a thank you card this week from a member of staff. Even the chief exec sometimes wants to thank you for going that extra mile.
Good. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this interview. I think there's so much that business owners and employers can take from what you're doing in terms of how they can get involved in terms of taking on younger members of staff, or also just becoming better employers as well. So really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, thank you once again, Laura-Jane.
Thanks, Rachel.